Hi, AJ.
How you doing?
As a parent, I really struggle with that thing you've just talked about, where I've talked to the kids yesterday and this morning, completely ineffective.
Yep, totally.
Because I've got so much suppressed emotion around how they're behaving, and
Can we go into some of that emotion? Do you mind?
sure. No, that's fine.
Let's go into some of it.
Yeah.
So if you stay in this conversation with me,
Yep.
what was one of the emotions you felt?
I was angry,
Okay, so remember anger
but that's very suppressed.
is the layer over fear, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
so all of a sudden you know that you're in this space.
Yep.
So let's look firstly at why you were angry. I might just grab another pen. Did you know why you felt a bit angry?
Well, the children are pretty wild, and I saw the potential for someone getting hurt.
So were you embarrassed?
Yes.
Is that how you spell embarrassed?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Were you also felt fear about safety?
Yes.
So there was a fear, shall we call it,
Yeah.
about safety?
Yeah. That wasn't huge.
Yeah.
But probably embarrassment.
Embarrassment was the biggest one?
Yeah, one of them.
So let's put that as number one.
Yeah.
Yep. Any others that you can think of that come up for you?
I was aware that they're disrupting people.
So you were worried about what other people thought?
Yeah.
So fear of judgment,
Yep.
shall we say?
Yep.
And by the way, a number in the group were judging. Quite a number in the group were judging yesterday. So that's the parents were receiving that judgment, right? Yeah. Go on. Any others that you can think of?
Just feeling like an ineffective parent,
Okay, so not a good dad.
Not a good dad, yeah.
Yeah.
And going down into feeling unheard, unappreciated, not listened to, and down into
Okay, so
whatever.
by your children. So your children are not.
Yeah.
So you're not heard.
Yeah.
Not appreciated.
Yeah. Not respected.
All right.
All those things.
Not respected. That's a big one, by the way. Not respected. Many parents have that going on. Yep. Not respected. Can you see how it's quite easy to get a list of emotions, isn't it?
Yeah.
So now your anger is the result of not wanting to feel these emotions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when we deny the feeling of those emotions, which, by the way, is the creator of the child's behaviour anyway, ironically.
Yeah.
Right? What happens is we express the anger to the child generally, or if somebody points out our child is doing something, we may even express the anger to the person who pointed it out, one of the two. Now, the key is to actually start addressing these emotions in the situation itself. And you'll notice this is very powerful if you're a parent, because if you start dealing with the situation in the immediate place that it's happening, what will occur is that your child's behaviour will instantly change, which indicates that you've hit the right thing. Now, one of the things that the rest of us have as a problem is that we don't often know when we're hitting a causal emotion. If you have a child, you instantly know when you're hitting a causal emotion because their behaviour instantly changes as a result. So that's the beauty of having children. Now, and I'll say it's one of the beauties, obviously. There's many others. All right, so we have fear, and then underneath the fear, of course, is the grief, right? You will find, as a parent, that all you need to do is acknowledge these fears even, and your child's behaviour will instantly begin to change.
Right.
You don't even need to permanently get to the grief. You will notice that when you start acknowledging these fears, and you go, this is about, I'm feeling embarrassed now. The instant you say, I'm feeling embarrassed now, there's something that goes on inside of your soul, and that is an allowance of the embarrassed feeling. Up until that time when you're in anger, you're not allowing the embarrassed feeling. So therefore, nothing can change.
Yeah.
When you allow the embarrassed feeling, now all of a sudden you've got this feeling passing through you, this embarrassed feeling, and now your child isn't feeling it from you and will automatically change their behaviour as a result. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And they don't. Half the time, your children have no idea that they're triggering you, no idea at all. And the reason why they have no idea is it's totally unconscious on their behalf, because all they are doing is reflecting the unhealed emotion the parents, or not just the parent, by the way, they're reflecting or the audience's unhealed emotion too in an audience situation, because they're feeling the environment perfectly, perfectly feeling the environment. So the key is, instead of getting into the anger place, all right, I'm in anger, so I know I'm in denial. I'm in denial of my fears. So what am I afraid of? All right, let me look at some of these emotions that I feel. I'm embarrassed. Okay. The key now is to acknowledge firstly to yourself that you are embarrassed, right? And why am I embarrassed? There's a number of reasons. I might feel like I'm not a good dad. I'm not, this, and people are, being disturbed because of my children, and we have a bit of ownership sometimes with our children as well, and we call them my children, and everyone else points the finger and say, they're your children, that your children did that sort of thing. And we have a lot of that embarrassment that comes from that projection and judgment. And so what finishes up happening is, in the end, we start to get away from these emotions because we don't want to experience these emotions as a parent in the situation. And the only alternative is actually to get angry after that, really, in the end, So the better thing to do is actually, in the situation, this is my child, all right? First step, me always feel my emotions. Second step, always deal with unloving behaviour, right? The first place I start with unloving behaviour is in myself. Right? So an unloving behaviour in myself is I've got an embarrassed feeling, but I don't want to feel it. That's an unloving act. What I'm doing is projecting it in that moment. My children are sensing that embarrassed feeling and triggering it even more through their behaviour. And all I need to do is feel this embarrassed feeling, and all of a sudden I'm in a loving space. I'm in a truthful space and a loving space inside of me. That automatically is going to make a change with what my children are feeling from me, automatically, without me addressing anything. But then when I go to speak to them, because I am feeling my own emotions, they will actually hear what I'm saying to them. Now, every one of your children just now this morning heard what I was saying to them because I'm feeling my emotions and therefore not projecting at them any of those particular things.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So my suggestion is now go through a list of those things and then let yourself relate that to your own childhood. Right, and your own parents' projection at yourself, and link it back, and that way you'll finish up getting to the grief. But even if you just allow yourself to see your fear, it will have a positive benefit on the child. Yeah. So that would be my recommendation. Firstly, always feel what I'm feeling as the parent. Secondly, always deal with unloving acts. But make sure that I'm owning the emotion while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So often I will say, and I've said to my boys when they were much younger, this is all, I can see this all comes from me. The reason why you act a certain way towards women is something to do with my emotion here. And I can see, when I've pandered towards women all my life, I've now taught you how to do that. Do you know what I mean? And I'm owning my own emotion while I'm speaking this. But I'm saying, but even though that's the case, while you do that, you are treating yourself unlovingly, just like I was treating myself unlovingly. You know what I mean? And I can go into that. And these things apply right across the board with our children. So even like our children, let's say our children never clean or tidy their room. Instead of going in and just yelling at them, tidy your room, you're not getting dinner until you tidy the room and all those kind of things. What does tidy room mean? It means that they have some worth, some sense of self and a pride of their environment. Now, if I've got no pride in my environment or a sense of self-worth, I am going to live in a pigsty. So if my child is living in the pigsty, my unhealed emotion is to do with some self-worth that my child is obviously experiencing. So the first thing I do is I allow myself to start feeling my own sense of self-worth. Do I really have a sense of self-worth, or do I just tidy my room because I got yelled at by my mother and father for 15 years about it? Do you know what I mean? And I deal with my own sense of self-worth. Now I have some personal pride in my environment. I will automatically desire a clean environment. Now I'm not projecting that at my child. Then if my child still is untidy, now I know it's their sense of self-worth, which is the same emotion that I've actually given them through their life, and then I help them actually develop some self-worth about themselves, about how do they feel about living in a pigsty. And once I work through that emotion with them, now they will probably clean their room without me saying a word. I've done this quite a lot with children, obviously, in travelling around with people and staying with them. So, and I remember one person who was an adult, actually, by the time I got to them, but he was always smelly, like personally, like, you know, lots of bad odour, smell. His clothes always smelt and everything. And instead of saying, look, you just stink all the time, which is tempting, right, because you can't bear the smell, right? So instead of just saying, you just stink all the time, we need to, instead I said, look, the truth is that your clothes and yourself are very smelly and it's really hard to put up with. That's the truth. But I don't want to talk to you about that. What I want to talk to you about is the reason why it's like that. And the reason why I feel it's like that is because you don't value yourself very much. You don't have any sense of pride in yourself. And as soon as I said those words, an adult man started crying. And he started working his way through some of the emotion of what happened when he was young and so forth about his own sense of worth. Now, the very next day, he got all of his clothes, disinfected a lot of them and washed them all. And he did that without anybody telling him. The very next day, he went through his entire room, which, by the way, he was staying in another person's home. He went through his entire room and tidied the whole thing up because it was a mess. When I say it was a mess, there wasn't a single space on the ground that you could walk on without treading on some of his clothes, right? And other things, food and other things, right? And then he was staying in a house as a guest and making this room like that. So obviously not very much sense of worth. And once he started working his way through his worth, he automatically changed his behaviour. Now, our children will do exactly the same as that. Mm. Yeah, exactly the same as that. If we address even just our fears about their behaviour. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. There's a lot more we will say about children and parenting and free will and all those things in other presentations.
Thanks.
But it's really important to... I feel it's important to address this issue because it's something that comes up regularly with parents, this issue of how do I let them have their free will but actually teach them about love in the process. You know, sorry, Angie, you want to...
Between.
You're in between in terms of like...
As parents, we're in between teaching them about giving them free will and teaching them about the loving consequences. It's us that's in between our thing.
That's right, because we haven't yet learned how to actually exercise our own free will in a loving manner, and so we then obviously then impose those injuries upon our children, so they don't know how to exercise their free will in a loving manner either. And that's a very important issue that we all need to face. The beauty of having children is you can process through these kind of emotions that the average person will have huge difficulty through a law of attraction of actually ever accessing. And yet when we have our children, they're all there just in a single moment, you know, half of those are there. And as long as we own them, we can get through lots of stuff quite rapidly. And you'll be amazed at the changes in your children when you do it. Like just absolutely amazed about what happens with them without you having to verbalise anything. The truth is that our children are much closer to a pristine condition than we ourselves are. So therefore, when we release some emotion and teach them about love, if we do both of those things, our children will understand love probably better than we do after a year or two of that. And we can learn a lot from them in that process. Yeah.